Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, here in the Mediterranean room and also online. And welcome to everybody to this workshop session on the European Startup Nation Standard and the European Startup Nations Alliance. So my name is Maarit Nyman. I'm from DG GROW, the Deputy Head of the SME unit, and I will be moderating this session today. And of course we have here a very distinguished panel who will make presentations on the topic. And we also have my colleague from DG Connect joining online. So Owen O'Neill, who is really the mastermind behind the initiative and who will, of course, explain you what the Startup Nations Standard and Alliance are all about. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we go in the substance matter. So you have received information on this session, and you saw that it was planned to be 2 hours, and due to different types of COVID-related restrictions, we had to limit, unfortunately, this session to 1 hour. So I suggest that we use this 1 hour in a very efficient way, and please, in the questions and answers session, don't hesitate to ask questions, give comments, because they are all welcome. So to kick off the session, I would just say a couple of words on the Startup Nations Standard. So as you probably know, it was a standard that we already announced in the SME Strategy last year in March, and then it was officially launched by Commissioner Breton this year, and it was signed up by all EU member states except Hungary, and also one of the EEA countries, Iceland. So there is a clear policy framework, there is a clear commitment from member states to implement it. And the idea, of course, with this session, the first objective is to raise awareness of this standard. And you also know that the standard, if you can change the slide, you know that this standard has 8 action areas or 8 standards, so very varied selection of different areas. I mean, creating a startup, attracting talent, procurement opportunities, and so forth. And as I said today, I mean, we need to be sure that we disseminate information on this Startup Nation Standard, that we also make sure that people are committed to its implementation, because it is in place, and also to see, I mean, how different stakeholders, member states, stakeholder organizations could contribute in an efficient manner to its implementation, and also if there is something that needs to be done to make it dynamic, to upgrade it. So all ideas are welcome. And the other part of today's workshop is about, if you could put the next slide, is about the European Startup Nations Alliance, which actually is now a very concrete structure, a new entity that has been put into place to implement all these ambitious standards and promote also the exchange of good practices related to startups, and provide technical support, monitor progress on how different member states go, I mean, and reach the different standards. And of course, the ultimate objective is to create, as it was said in the morning in the introductory session, there was a question of what does the Commission do to promote startups. So the basic aim, of course, is to create a growth-friendly environment for startups across the European Union, in all member states. And of course, this is a very much a joint action. So that's why we are here to discuss also how we could use this Startup Nations Alliance in the best possible way. So this was my part of the introduction, and I would like to now hand over the floor to Ewan O'Neill, who is the colleague in DG Connect, who is really the initiator or the driving force of both of these initiatives. So Ewan, over to you. Sorry, but we can't.
Muted.
We can't hear you.
Classic
Now.
Zoom error. Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Merit, for the introduction. Delighted that this workshop is taking place, and I'm only sorry I cannot join in person. Nevertheless, I'm delighted to have the opportunity to just share a few thoughts to complement, reinforce what Merit has just been saying. The timing of this is great. This opportunity to talk and discuss with you today. We are right at the beginning of the implementation phase of the EU Startup Nations Standard. This is a key moment where we go from aspiration to implementation. And this ESNA entity, as you just was mentioned a few moments ago, it's very new. It was only launched less than 2 weeks ago at the Web Summit in Lisbon. And today is our first outreach event to talk about ESNA, its objectives, and to get input as well from a key stakeholder community for this policy initiative. The community of SMEs who are gathered today, this week in Slovenia for the SME Assembly are ultimately, think about it, you would be the ultimate beneficiaries of the EU Startup Nations Standard and ESNA, which is implementing this policy initiative. So to talk to you today is deeply appropriate and very timely because literally now we're at day zero. We're at the beginning of the real-world implementation of this policy. But there's three things I would like to highlight with you today. What do we want to achieve? What's something I'd like to underline for you? Today, with this workshop, I'm hoping that I just want to help, and I hope that you all have a better understanding of this initiative and the policy goals we have here. Because with understanding can come contribution, which I'll get to in a moment. The second thing is, I would like this SME community, as represented in Slovenia today, to see this policy initiative and the implementation entity as a tool, a lever for you to use in order to ensure SMEs across Europe have the best framework conditions to grow. And in each country, there are the hallmarks of a growth environment. We've got the 8 standards identified in the standard. Now it's time for the member states to implement them under their national legislation. We have political buy-in, confirmed that these 8 standards are legitimate and are worth implementing. Now it's time to move from words to action. And the third point is, this is ESNA, the EU Startup Nations Standard, is not just something that is static. It's something that can be dynamic and we can improve over time. We can add best practices. And to do so, we need input. Input from the ultimate beneficiaries, SMEs across Europe, startups, scale-ups, those who can deliver growth for Europe. And there will be a call for expression of interest to get a stakeholder voice included into ESNA. And I look forward to having representatives of the SME community providing their voice through that channel. But I'll bring it to a close there. I could keep talking, but I would like to bring in some other very helpful voices. I'm delighted that we have representatives of member states, signatory countries here, because ultimately it's the signatory countries who own this, the ESNA legal entity, and who will lead it and who will implement the standards in their national legislation. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and I look forward to the debate and exchange with the panelists and the audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Owen, for this presentation and making more specific and clear the objectives for this session. I suggest, as we don't have that much time, I suggest that we move on directly to the presentations of the panelists. So I have a pleasure to introduce you Ana Festas Enriquez, who comes from the Office of Portuguese Secretary of State for Digitalization. who has, I think personally you and also your organization has really a very big stake in the Startup Nation standard elaboration, but especially on this alliance new entity structure, construction, and kind of thinking how this governance could work and what its objective should be. So please.
Thank you. Do I have my slides? Okay. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Just to recap a little bit and go a little bit behind on the history, I will just start to explain how this idea came to us. So while we were preparing for the Portuguese presidency of the Council of the European Union, we did a diagnosis of Europe ecosystem. And we found out that although Europe had the biggest absolute startup number, it was lacking behind when compared with other ecosystems such as China, USA, and Israel. So we start thinking, how are we going to help Europe to become the leading front in the global Europe startup ecosystem? How are we going to contribute to help Europe become a global player instead of a global playground for others, like the European Union President so well said it? So we created ESNA, or we are creating ESNA, the European Startup Nation Alliance. As Owen said it, the scope of it's around the European Declaration Startup Nation Standards that has 8 best practices established in it. Nena will speak later on in more detail about these 8 best practices, but what I can tell you from now on is that ESNA will help member states implement them in order for them to become a nation startup. So for that, we need to have data. How do we know the status of each country, of each member state? So we will create a centralized data platform that will have data from all the member states and will help us to provide guidance and monitor the implementation of these best practices. We also need to establish a single network connection for all Europe. So this will connect all of the European startups organizations in order to ensure that we have an harmonized playground and not fragmentation around Europe. We will also need to create a strong European brand around startups, and we need to ensure that startups can grow and internalize here in Europe without having to go abroad. So this will be the main scope, the main strategic areas of ESNA. So what about the governments? The governments will be around 3 main bodies. We'll have a presidency board, which will have rotated seated members. The logic will be the same as the European presidency of the European Council. So we ensure that startups are a priority in the Europe agenda. This body will provide guidance and supervision in a non-executive way to the ESNA. Then we'll have an advisory board. This board, as its name would say, it is built to bring strategy advice in a strategic way. It will be composed by members who are not part of ESNA, individuals and organizations, but who are part of the ecosystem. This will bring us and will help us to create a strategic vision with all the stakeholders seated at the same table. And then we'll have the extended team, which will be composed by focal points from each member state, representing them in a public policy way. So now you can ask, where are we now? Currently, so as Owen said, we had 2 weeks ago, or almost 2 weeks ago, the first ESNA Forum, which is a high-level political meeting where the member states received in first hand the status of the development of ESNA. This will happen every year. We had the ESNA launch, a symbolic moment. Nena was there also, so you can see it cutting the ribbon on stage. And then we have the visit for the headquarters of ESNA, who will be staying in Lisbon in a venue close by to Web Summit and with a gorgeous view to Tagus River. Although I'm not sure, Nena, if it's so wonderful as this one, but hopefully it will be. So the next steps, last I'll finish with this. The next steps is to finish the legal creation of ESNA. We already have 6 member states who are willing to join us at this stage. Slovenia is one of them, so we are very happy about that. We want to keep working with the focal points in order to guarantee the implementation of the best practices. We will have the first General Assembly and conclude the first action plan of the year. We will finish the executive search. It will be an European executive search for the Board of Directors. The Board of Directors will be composed by European individuals who are part and who will represent member states. And at last, we will have as a goal to activate the advisory board. So this is where we are currently now. Thank you very much. I'll pass on to, I think, Nena, Margaret, to introduce next.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Anna, for this presentation. Set out very clearly the steps to build the alliance and also the current developments, and I think you have a very good start. So if we go on presenting these 8 standards and national practices, so I welcome Nena Dokuzov, and you come from the Ministry of Economic Development and Technology from here in Slovenia. So please.
Hello, thank you very much. I want to welcome you here in Slovenia. I'm very happy that I see so many participants here, and I'm also very happy that the Commission is supporting that event during the presidency of Slovenia to EU. And thanks, Anna, because you made a great introduction for this further presentation. But it looks like we have something very similar, because our presentations are very similar as well. So what I have to say that Slovenia was one of the signing countries of the declaration, and from that moment on the development is going on and it is upgrading, and we came to the point where we have a structure of ESNA, where we have clear or the rules are becoming more and more clear how it is going to be organized, and where we have very clear focus. There were 3 steps regarding the development of ESNA, and now we are at the 3rd step, and this is the action. And what we like most is the action, so the real things are going to start to be happen. Milestone 3 will start its initial analysis and data collection of the member states. It was mentioned previously, Anna mentioned the platform, but maybe I will go first to that famous event which was which enabled the launch of ESNA in Lisbon few weeks ago. You can see the building. The building behind us will be a headquarters. It is under construction at the moment, but it will welcome all the initiatives, all the organizations that want to contribute to ESNA and to contribute to the ecosystem. This was our first meeting, and during the Web Summit in Lisbon there was a really huge event of promoting entrepreneurship, digitalization, and the development as such. So if I go to standards, it was mentioned before that we have here 8 standards. I will just go through every standard one by one, and then maybe summarize where we are in Slovenia here. So for first standard is fast startup creation and smooth market entry. We know that in Europe, more or less, we are covering that standard because also the European legislation and the national legislations that are adjusted enable that smooth market entry for the companies. It is even more significant for IT companies and for digital startups because there is the supply is very elastic, so we can say that the market entry is quite smooth in Europe. The other thing that we are facing a little bit lack of is the talent attraction. We know that at the moment, and taking into consideration other regions, the most of them are in Asia. A lot of skilled persons, especially in digital skills, are in Asia. We cannot pull them into Europe, and we need, and here that standard will motivate also the member states to motivate the talent recognition and also the migration regulation to be promoted and to be set to smooth entry also for the talents. The third is stock options. Okay, we know that apart from the stock options, we have another possibilities, but this is one of the options that we are following for promoting startup ecosystem. Innovation in regulation is very connected to innovation procurement. We know that recently we adopted recovery and resilience plans in Europe after COVID, and it was very much recommended from European Commission to go into innovative procurement system. Innovative procurement gives to the companies the possibility to enter into the market for public services, and this is the orientation that is very right to let innovative ideas to come into traditional sectors like public administration, like the other traditional sectors. Then access to finance. We know that European Union and also member states provide a lot of financing for startups, for SMEs. But even if that, we need to develop also the private sector investment, to boost the private investments into the companies and to follow that companies to the scale-up phase. Social inclusion, diversity, and protecting democratic values. We know that today we have technologies that can enable and that can enable social inclusion even more. After COVID, we are very aware that without digital technologies we could not be socially included into the whole process of work, of living, and of existing of the society. And digital first, yes, we need this as something that is necessary behind the basic infrastructure, the basic services that need to be founded on the digital foundation, for example. So where we are in Slovenia, with the plus, or green plus, I marked the areas that we are quite strong. With the circles, white ones, I marked the areas that are pending to be strong, and for the stock options we do not have them yet, but we are going to, also with the help of this standard, we are going to focus and develop that financial ecosystem for startup companies as well. Anna was mentioning earlier what we have on the agenda, but I just want to give the reflection. For example, data platform. We know that today on the European level have been a lot of initiatives or projects, but two of them are very important. First is European cloud data infrastructure, for example. The second is European blockchain services infrastructure, and our recommendation is that we shall find out how we can include those infrastructures that are already developed and existing into the creation of this platform to get it faster, to recognize the data, to identify which data can we collect, and to start to collect them even with these facilities that are existing. Network, definitely, and it shows that there is a huge interest. Anna said before that we are going to have the presidency roles and then extended group, maybe to use some lessons learned from the other initiatives. Government advisory body, for example, is one of the bodies that the governments can participate. European brand, definitely we are very proud to be European in all the stages, so we are going to strengthen the ecosystem to build a really strong European brand. And for the growth, yes, definitely we were, I have to say that we were joking that we need to go international, but in any case, if Europe wants to have a primary position in all the regions in the world, globally, we need to follow internationalization to growth and for scale up of the companies. I would finish here. Thank you very much, and I will be available for other questions later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nena, for this very interesting presentation, and also going through the eight standards and where Slovenia stands on them. Normally the next speaker is from France Digital. Yes. So we have an online speaker. So Julia Fenard. So welcome, Julia. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It's great to see you. I can see Jan, I think, from here, from the screen. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I'll introduce a little bit France Digital for those that don't know our organization. We are the largest startup association in Europe. We federate more than 1,800 startups and more than 100 investors, venture capitalists mostly. And France Digital is an independent, non-governmental organization and non-profit. And we have strong European ambitions, so we are happy members of the European Startup Network, of course. And I sit at the board of Allied for Startups, and we've been following really closely recent developments with the Startup Nation Standard. And I would like to immediately deep dive into today's subject and tell you a bit more about the three things that we are really excited about. For us, the first achievement of the Startup Nation Standard Declaration was to secure the support of Germany. Because we know it wasn't easy for Germany to engage on stock options, which we believe were really at the core and at the heart also of the initiative. And the fact that they eventually aligned with the other 25 countries was so important, and it sent such a strong and positive signal that I really had to stress this out today. So we really look forward to Germany's action in this field, in the stock options, and of course all other countries. Coordination in this field, I think, is the top priority for us. The second thing we were really excited about at France Digital was the creation of the ESNA, to implement and monitor the progress on the declaration, because when we have ambitions, it's good to have the resources also to follow and monitor the progress. The only thing is that we wish, of course, startup associations were included in the organigram, but honestly, we can count on us to help monitor to what extent the standards are actually implemented on the ground. And you can count on us as startup associations to collect stakeholders' feedback as well. So France Digital will keep you informed of how well France is doing in implementing the standards. And third, I think we have an unprecedented opportunity also to advance startup priorities at the EU level with the upcoming French presidency of the EU. For us, the French presidency will be the occasion to share with our European partners the best practices that have made France one of the largest and most dynamic startup ecosystem in the EU. For example, on the stock option regime, we have made tremendous progress in this field in the past few years. That's something it will be great to share. On the French tech visa, also, for example, this immigration tool for talent is increasingly used in France by startups, so that's also something we'd love to share. And also the role of our national promotional bank, BPI France, to support investment. I think they've also been doing a great job here, and we'd be happy to see that also and share some of the best practices there as well. But we also have a lot to learn from other signatories, of course, and I would like to stress out public procurement. For example, many EU countries perform better than France in terms of access to public procurement for SMEs and startups, and we need to meet the highest standards. So I think ESNA is an amazing opportunity for this. So to conclude on the French presidency, also something that we'd love to see is ESNA partnering with Scale Up Europe, or cooperating. So Scale Up Europe is the startup initiative launched by President Macron. And by doing so, we believe that ESNA can help the French presidency advocate and build political support for more ambitious startup policies. Both initiatives share the same ambition, and I think efforts should be mutualized. They both go in the really good direction. So happy to help in anything, and looking forward also to the discussions later on. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Julia, for your presentation. And then, last but not least, of course, Jan Boremons, CEO from Europe Startup Network. So please.
Okay, thank you for inviting me to this panel. So indeed, I'm leading the European Startup Network, which is a NGO based in Brussels, with as members the national startup associations of all EU 27 countries, but also have the honor to be asked to be secretary of the Independent Ecosystem Leader Group, which is a group that was called into life by Commissioner Gabriel, and where we want to have the ambition to dramatically increase our position as a startup continent. And we have this catchphrase that we want to have 10 times more unicorns per year for the next 10 years. And we have delivered an action plan to the Commissioner with a focus on definitions, talent, ecosystems, and interaction with member states. And we pay a lot of attention to not be too humble, to instead look at what's going well into Europe and to scale this over the whole continent. And when I mean the whole continent, I speak about things like innovation cohesion. We don't want to have a situation where, like in the US or in China, the wealth creation by startups is concentrated in very small parts geographically of the continent. We, on the other hand, we want the whole of Europe to profit. Finally, we think that the time for blah blah and for policy papers is over, and we should now go into action. And so that's why we're very happy with the Startup Nation standard, because I think we share the same focus on action now, and also because the 8 standards, they deal with several aspects of our action plan. So we are certainly very positive. As you know, we co-wrote parts. I mean, our members co-wrote parts of the standard, so of course we think it's a great thing. Maybe I would like to reflect on how you could use the standard, because that's, looking forward. I think one way that you could do this is to rank countries. I don't think this is maybe the most ideal way. I think the first way is that you offer really a self-reflection tools to countries, looking into the mirror and see where they are. And as a second step, you can, I think, as a country, track your own progress, which is a very valuable thing. And then, as you mentioned, the exchange of best practices, learning from each other, this is very valuable. Looking also towards the future, I think startup associations, also as Julia said, should be involved, because from previous experiences we know it is great and essential that member states and the European Commission are involved. This is essential. But you need people with boots on the ground, and we are the people with boots on the ground, and so we're looking forward on a way to collaborate together. Julia also mentioned the things like Scale Up Europe, and indeed there are many initiatives, and I think that the traffic light approach that was pioneered by Slovenia is one of these tools that in fact is incorporating the Startup Nation standards, the action plan, Scale Up Europe, etc., so that this is a way to make these things compatible and work together, because I think it's essential that they do work together. And then finally, at the EU level, there will be the IAC forum that will integrate the recommendations from the Startup Nation standard, from the action plan, but also from the female VC group, from the industry research group. So I think it is essential that indeed all these activities are aligned and that we are all aiming for the same goal of making this continent the startup continent. So to conclude and to leave time for the Q&A, I look forward to see the progress of this, and I look forward to working together. Thank you.
Can I just clarify?
Yes, of course.
Because I heard your presentation, Julia. So you will be part of the advisory board. We'll have all of the ecosystems, so VCs, startup organizations, all of them. So it won't be something that will work without the ecosystem. It's not the idea. Yeah. And we'll align all of the initiatives together. Yeah. So that's the idea.
This is my gut feeling. This is my hope. But on the slide, I didn't see startup associations. So until it's there, I'm pushing this point.
But it is. Okay. It's an advisory board, so I'm telling you, it is.
Good. So thank you very much for these presentations, and I think we move directly to the questions and answers. So please.
Okay. Hi. Thank you very much for this. I have a question to clarify after your clarify. My name is Valeria Ranito. I'm a professor in the University of Crete. And at the same time, I'm the director of Institute for Research for Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises in Greece. So I want to ask you something. Who participate from each country in this ESNA initiative? And especially, for instance, I see Greece does not participate for the moment. So I'm going back tomorrow, and I say to who? To the Minister of Development, to the Minister of Technology, to my organization, the big organization of this social partner, who is going to, what do you want from us to participate in this ESNA?
Okay. So,
Please, because I don't understand.
Yes.
I understand what is the network,
Yeah.
okay, but I don't understand exactly
Okay.
who is going to represent our
Each member
country
state. Okay.
to this new initiative.
So the focal points will be nominated by the member state. So Greece will designate one member state. I'm not sure. I have a list I can see later on my laptop if you, and I can tell you with whom are we connecting from your government and who are we waiting for the information, and then you can go back on it. That will be very helpful for us.
Thank
So
you very much.
that's how it will be implemented. Thank you.
Any other comments, Peter, please?
Yes, thank you. Peter Waasdorp, Ministry of Economic Affairs in the Netherlands, also the EU SME envoy for the Netherlands. I strongly support all the policy attention for startups. It's wonderful to see so much attention for startups and, of course, scale-ups. At the same time, it's for me sometimes a little bit confusing so much attention there is, all the different programs. We have the Startup Nations standard, we have the Alliance, and we have all these different agendas and policy forums, for example the SME Info Network. So how can we combine and reinforce all these different developments? That would be my first question. And the second question, I would echo the presentation made by Jan, because policy is of course crucial in creating an excellent startup climate, but that's not the only thing. We need the whole ecosystem. We need the investors. We need all the universities, schools, etc. To have an excellent startup climate. And so you already clarified a little bit, but I'm curious, how can we involve all the ecosystem and not make it only a policy discussion? How important it is. We signed the Startup Nation standard, of course, as the Netherlands. But there's more than policy. It's also including all the rest of the ecosystem. Yeah. So that would be my two questions. Thank you.
Okay, I don't know if it should be. Do you want me to answer?
Yes.
Okay, I'll go first. So ESNA will start, so the Startup Nations Alliance will start by the main, as a strategic area, by implementing the policy, helping countries to implement the policy, the European Declaration standards. So that will be the first part. So they are connected, that's the main. But we need more than that, as you were saying. So this will be helping countries to take actions, to build stock options. So it's not policy, retain talent. What we call here policy was the declaration. Now it's putting our hands into action and ensure that they are implemented in each member state, in order that we have a cohesion territory where startups can go from one country to another. That's the first one. The second question is involving the whole ecosystem. You're absolutely correct. There is no point in, it won't be a success without them. So we have the advisory board where all the members and all the stakeholders, investors, startups, all of them will be part of it, so that they have a voice. But this is a starting point. So for the start, we'll start with this, working on this, but then later on we will go to other things. But we don't want to, we need action, but we need to focus. Otherwise, if we have several plans of actions, nothing will be done. So we just decided to start with this, and then we'll go on and on with the rest. So this is as a first step. I'm not sure if I answer your question, or do you want any
I was only, could I come in here and ask Ivana?
My question, but
okay. Owen also has a...
Thank you very much for the question. To be clear, ESNA, the EU Startup Nation standard, is not a silver bullet. It's not going to solve all of the challenges for the startup ecosystem, for the wider entrepreneurial world in Europe. I fully agree with our colleague from the Netherlands, the SME envoy from the Netherlands. We have to include the whole ecosystem. It's not just startups, investors, accelerators, universities, and schools. I was intrigued to hear you correctly say as well. One thing I would like to highlight is in the 8 standards, we have initiatives and standards that are addressing investors, addressing access to finance, even business angels being explicitly called out for particular attention. We have also a standard which includes tech transfer from universities to get more of the great breakthroughs out of our university laboratories and into the marketplace, implementing best practices in that area. One gap, I will admit, and it was mentioned in the intervention just now, is schools. Schools are not being addressed in the EU Startup Nation standard. And I go back to what I said earlier today. This is a dynamic standard. It can evolve. It needs to evolve over time. And maybe there's something it can do on that front as well to promote, for example, entrepreneurship in secondary schools in Europe. Question mark. Definitely some scope for reflection there. But yes, we need to include the entire ecosystem. The advisory group that was mentioned in Anna's slide explicitly is targeted on representatives of the wider startup ecosystem to be engaged and informing ESNA. It's foreseen. I confirm. You will be involved in this. But voila, I just wanted to add that to the answer. Thank you. Back to you guys.
So I would also like to add, if I may. So I think it's important, and that's happening, that so all these initiatives are talking to each other. And basically, the good thing is we want the same thing, so the noses are in the same direction. Okay. I think also at the European, and so this unprecedented attention to startups by the Commission is something good. If I compare it to 10 years ago, this is certainly something good. And also, it is clear that startup needs things from different services and different DGs. Yeah? And so that's why I'm happy that, for instance, last Friday we had an unprecedented workshop with high-ranking officials from different EC services, over more than 30 representatives from the EC and 30 representatives from the startups associations. And so everyone was present there, so we talked to each other and we work towards concrete actions. And I also hope that the EIC forum, which was agreed by the members with the Council and with the Parliament, will make sure that these different action plans and the SNS are aligned. So this is a new constellation. I think the good news is we talk to each other, we basically want the same thing, we complement each other, and there is a synchronization at the EU level. So I am optimistic. Of course, I'm not naive, so that's why I'm pushing here on making sure that people on the ground are involved. But I'm sure, as Egoan said, mechanisms will be there. But I think this working together and wanting the same thing is important.
And if I can add, I had very similar considerations, why, how, and what should be done. But after a short analysis that we had, we have a lot of alliances, a lot of networks, one and the other, but the missing link was definitely the alliance on the ecosystems. And this is value added that we are getting, because ecosystems are connecting everybody. I'm not missing the schools here, because the schools can come later. The process of the schools is coming later anyway. So with the development of the standards, I think that we will address also the schools. The second thing that is very important is that platform. Because it will enable that visibility. It will enable the recognition of each alliance, maybe, I don't know, SME Alliance, Digital SME Alliance. We have millions of these alliances on the European level. And the really value added of ESNA and the platform will be that they will be visible, they will be recognized, and they will hopefully have a chance peer-to-peer for peer-to-peer communication. And this would be really of something worth.
And if I could just add one more thing, it's really quick. ESNA has enough resources for a minimum of 5 years of operations. This is not something that's just going to disappear tomorrow. The financial resources to back 5 years of operations are confirmed. ESNA is here to stay for at least a half a decade and to catalyze the actions that are necessary. Thank you.
5 minutes. 4 minutes.
Okay. Good. Are there any other questions, comments? Yes, please.
Morning to all. Albert Palmer from Barcelona, proud member of the European Business Angel Network. European Microfinance Network, Startup Nation, Global Entrepreneurship Network, and also present in several assemblies 6 or 7 years ago. Then I want to congrats the activity in support of SMEs. It's not enough. Systems, groups, or programs to support our institutions, to support the situation that today the SMEs we have. We are assisting to the worst pandemic, not in human beings. Great, thanks God there is not, but in terms of the small companies. The very small companies are dying. A full generation of small companies are dying. And perhaps now it's time, as you have said, for the action, not for the policy. And we are here standing for those people. I'm also an entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur, and a business angel. We have invested in several companies, and we have supporting during these 2 years the financing of these companies. And we know that there is big plans from the Commission coming this morning. We have had this information, but it's a rain that it's not falling down into the SMEs in the countries. It's in the policy level, countries level, groups level, not arriving. And all these people will not last 1 or a year standing. Then there is any activity. Of course, we will support the ecosystem and the advisory group, and if you want to send us an invitation, we will be glad to take part of this. But there is, for your activity, you have a budget for 5 years, that's great. That's great, you do sustainability. But for the sustainability of the small companies and to these companies have your support, there is any concrete plan to be achieved this year? Thank you.
Okay. There were ideas, but the ideas were very strong, and I think that they are leading to sustainability model. At the meeting that I showed on my presentation, we talked a lot about creating a kind of fund of funds, because we need that mechanism that will constantly support the creation and existence of startups, but we also need a kind of regenerative source of financing. So we will try to attract either private investors or corporates or corporations, large companies, because it's good also for them to transform, to go into the market, and to open for startups, for innovation. And I know that this idea came from Spain. And we very welcome this idea, because it is really self-sustaining mechanism, and if we manage to build this, it will be long-term success for the startups. So,
and another that I think Nina spoke about this is using part of the recovery plan for startups.
Yes.
So, but that will be used by each member state.
It will be startup.
Yeah, in Portugal, I can tell you there will be an investment in that area. So that would be it. I think
Good. I think we are a little bit tight with the time, but maybe very quick intervention still. Okay. Please. Yeah.
Correct. Ricardo Mazão, I'm from VETI, which is an organization that works with innovation between corporates and startups. Now, we heard here a lot of the 8 standards, but the one thing is what Europe can do as standards, and then there is a fight for talents for all these countries in Europe. And so we hear different countries presenting different packages to attract the best talent, best startups. I mean, we just heard a great speech from France. And so, is there a mechanism that builds on best practices of each one of these countries, and then brings maybe this could be another standard for the ESNA, or some mechanism that takes the ideas And then how do you choose what's the next step? Thank you.
Okay, so the declaration, the European Declaration Startup Nation was built based on that, the best practices of each country. And the idea regarding talent is to ensure that we have tech visas that are provided in a short term quickly and that are able to bring talent to Europe on one hand. And then we also have on the declaration ideas of how to retain talent. I think maybe later on we will implement others' ideas on how to become better on that. But for starter, we will start with this. So to start, we'll begin with this right now. The idea also behind ESNA is to have the member states sitting on the same table and discussing the best practices and what is working on one member state and what is not working on the other, and ensuring that all the member states go in the same direction and that Europe is harmonized in all the member states, and that you are able to have the same in all the member states, not just France going somewhere, Spain going somewhere, all of Europe. And that you are able to have talent in all of Europe and have a startup that can open in all Europe, knowing that you have the same conditions everywhere. So that is as a starting point. I hope
I would just like to add something really quickly on this, and Julia did touch upon this in her presentation. It is clear that under the French presidency of the European Council, starting on the 1st of January, there will be a strong focus on talents for the startup and scale-up ecosystem. And we even had a preparatory meeting with some ministries in France last week on this very topic. So I think it will be something prominent that you will see during the French presidency as it's pushing for action at a European level. Thank you.
I think there was another. Yeah, two more, three,
yes.
four.
Maybe quickly.
Okay,
yes,
five.
Please.
Hi, my name is Dan Privat from Tradex Business Transfer in Romania. And for me it's a little bit confusing what I'm hearing. You call it startup, but to the scale up. Jan, you mentioned unicorns. So a startup is just an idea. To make that in a business, you need to go to the next level, which is a scale up. And if you call this program startup, a bunch of people, a bunch of entrepreneurs who have already a business and they need to go to the next level, they are not come towards you because they think it's just a startup program which you can find a bunch of those in Romania. Most of the startups from Startup Nation, they are already bankrupt before they get a chance to scale up. So I know it's very friendly word in Europe, startup, but I think you need to go to the next level.
We agree with this very much, but we need to start somewhere to come to the point. And what was the problem also in Europe, that, for example, USA was very much promoting entrepreneurship and everything like this, and we needed to start somewhere in Europe because we know that we are lacking of this, and after that we need to have mechanisms for scale up. But
that's it.
But maybe if I may, so I share your concern. And so if you look at Scale Up Europe, which is explicitly targeting scale-ups and which we co-authored and presented to Macron in June. So the good news is that the recommendations that come out of this and SNS, they are not orthogonal. They are looking in the same direction. Yeah? So that's why I think it's important to have things like the EIC forum that synchronizes this. Yeah? So I get your point, and if you read the Scale Up Europe document, I think you will find answers to that part. And so that's why I think it's important that we make sure that all these actions are converging, and I think that European Commission has an important role there.
Another one at the back.
I think there are more.
We are running out.
Three more.
Yes.
Okay.
Please.
Hi, my name is Naya Alfonstal. I just have a really quick question in regards to procurement. So is there any help or perhaps incentivizations that ESNA can provide to startups to make use of European origin products or European manufacturing? just as we're seeing some serious issues with supply chain in China, I think this is an amazing opportunity to bring more here, and it can really start with startups. So
That's a great point. We don't have that, at least in the beginning, but maybe later on we can add that as one of the goals. We'll start with these 8 standards for now, and then we can perhaps move forward. That's a good idea.
Good.
Okay.
Then maybe from there. Sorry to point, yes.
One of the biggest buyers in Europe is the public sector. And one of the big difficulties for startups is to bid through the public procurement rules.
Yeah, but no, it's...
What have you thought of? I'm Rasmus Channing. I'm with Denmark. I'm with the Creative Business Network. We're in 80 countries working with startups in the culture and creative industries. And we see that lots of them have a really difficult times actually being part of bids for the public sector. So open innovation in the public sector, working with startups in the public sector, have you thought of those kind of initiatives? Because it is one of the biggest buyers, one of the biggest markets is the startup to government, if it could be worked out.
So I don't think we have, but Owen can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we have something specific in the declaration about that, but we have something regarding the rules and the burdens and administrative burdens for startups. So in order to ensure that we minimize the administrative burden and that the legislation applicable has specific parts applicable to startups and SMEs.
But I can reassure you that at the European level we are hammering a lot on this because it is a very huge problem. Yeah. And so in different fora we are pushing this button constantly. Yeah.
And Europe has started to build the guidance for innovation procurement, so it will become a mainstream in some period of time. I'm strongly for your idea because it is the same problem anywhere in Europe. And maybe we can think about a kind of cooperation with startups within that process of procurement. Also through sandbox systems. We know that we have an instrument that can be more used for communication, for innovative ideas also.
That's also in the declaration, that part, in the part in innovation. So
I can say there is a Horizon Europe call coming up this spring on open innovation and procurement innovation that we are looking for. We have several partners there, but if you're wanting to join, and also we had a conference recently with Helsinki and with Sweden, with Stockholm and Helsinki try to inspire Copenhagen on how we can actually do it. It is possible to follow public procurement rules and work with startups. It is possible.
I know it is. I only need a quick one. Standard number 5 explicitly addresses innovation procurement in quite good detail, and also regulatory sandboxes. The promotion of those is also, as Anna said. So Startup Nation Standard recognizes the challenges for startups to participate in innovation procurement and is advocating the implementation of best practices to address that. ESNA is on the case.
Yeah, okay. I think 2 more questions.
Well, I think we need to close, but maybe one question from back there still, and then we need to close. Yeah, please.
Do you hear me?
No. If you could come, stand up.
Yeah, stand up.
There is no microphone. Due to COVID, we don't have microphones.
Yes, if you maybe come just closer.
Oh,
Or come here.
So my name is Ursula. I'm I'm a startup in the area of education, and I would maybe just like to put this on the table because education is one of the markets that it's not being digitalized yet, and it's really difficult as a startup to get your foot into this system. What the colleague was mentioning, and it's super important that edtech as such becomes a notion, like deep tech and blockchain and edtech, because otherwise American companies are gonna, because they do have a commercial educational environment, they're gonna develop the solutions that we will be forced to use to educate our children. So startups really need support in this area as well. Thank you.
They waited.
Last row. The last row.
Because they had they were with their hands.
Sorry?
Maybe the last two, because they were
yes.
making,
Okay,
they were
so
already, so you two. And then you at the back, I'm sorry, you should also come. We'll finish with you, so. Yes.
Hello, Lisa Lang my name. I'm the woman from Brussels, aka I'm like a really boring policy person and also serial entrepreneur. So of course there can't be not enough policy work. I'm missing that as well, but like just examples why it is so important. So like in medtech, we have a big barrier because the implementation between textiles and electronics is not harmonized for it. Everybody across the world is ignoring it. We are blocking for standards where there are no standards. We are blocking innovation and SMEs. Farm tech, yes, we want to have local farming, but like if you want to use drones or on local fields, you're not allowed to do so. So like from quite frankly, from a European startup network, I'm expecting to have a voice and say like, you know, it's like, even if it's like, yes, I know, it's super boring and it's tedious and takes long time, but it takes 10 years. So like, if you're not getting involved with that now, we're getting forced to move outside of Europe, which quite frankly happened in the last decades, in order to, you know, put our brains to work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa.
So I have a two-word response.
Yes.
Regulatory sandboxes. Promotion of it's happening via ESNA.
Oh, I like the voice. Good. The God.
Okay. So, please.
So, thanks a lot. It's quite important to have more startups. I'm Thanos from European Startup Universe. We would like to democratize access to the best startup resources to startups everywhere in the EU right now with the European Startup Universe. So, my question is, how you could cooperate with other organizations? Is it only for governmental organizations, ESNA, or is it for everyone? And which is the way that we're gonna cooperate?
Thanks. Good question.
So through the advisory board, and it will be open for all the organizations, you can participate. And the idea is to give advice to ESNA and how they should proceed their activity. So you will have a voice and you will give relevant input of what should be done in order for ESNA not to be something outside working without any input for the community. Otherwise, it's just like someone said.
Is there a structured process for organizations?
We will open. Yeah, we will open something really soon. That will be later on, and you will be probably contacted for that.
Great.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I think it's. We finished.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's always nice to have this problem that there are too many enthusiastic people trying to get the floor and no one saying anything. So it certainly shows the interest on this topic, and it also certainly shows the value of your work. So in a very few words, what I would take away from this discussion today is first of all that we have all the policies and the policy framework which is convergent in place, and now we need to move to the action. And of course the ESNA is the tool that we need to be able to use in a very efficient way. And as it was said by several speakers here, participants, is that we really need to look at the whole ecosystem. We need to see, I mean, what is already in place in member states, what are the different networks, ecosystems, and how ESNA could leverage their work, so bringing people together. And of course, it's not only member states, it's not only specific stakeholder groups, but it's really the whole society in a way. So now we have a good structure, but it's kind of building it up to the full speed. So I think that's the first message that I would take from these discussions. And then the second, which is extremely important in general when we talk about SMEs and SME policy, is the exchange of good practices, because there are plenty of them. I mean, we have seen it in SME policy. We have the SME strategy, we have all the other instruments, and there are really plenty of good practices in member states, and not only in member states but also from stakeholders. And we need to find a very kind of specific and efficient platform to bring these best practices together. And not only that we put them there, but that they can be then discussed if people are interested in a specific country is doing X and I'm interested in doing that. So that there is a discussion and dissemination, really very wide dissemination, involving all stakeholders. I mean, SME Voice, of course, are involved, but also business organizations, the startup organizations. So it's really bringing everybody together, and that takes some time. And then my last conclusion or takeaway would be that, of course, we need political support. So it's very good that presidencies like the Slovenian presidency has been extremely active in supporting this work. So big applause for that. And then we heard also that the French presidency is very keen on carrying on this work. So we need your support, we need your involvement, and of course we need to continue these discussions. I mean, this was just a very small, like, drop in the ocean, but important drop. So let's carry on the good work. So thank you very much for your participation and also for online participation.
Thank you so much.